Canaan's canopy cover. I really love this town. From what I understand, the town mascot is a tree. All of the slow down in our town signs all have this beautiful tree framing the message. That made me feel so at home seeing that everywhere I was driving around in this town. I'm not from here. I'm from Suffern, New York. So I moved to working here at Almstead recently in Stamford. I recently just sold my house in Suffern, and I'm living in Stamford right now. And I'm a past president of the Rotary Club. Rotary's always been an important part of my professional life, and I'm really looking forward to continuing on working with Rotary here in New Canaan. So yeah, the slowdown in our town signs are wonderful. They really do make me feel right at home. One of the big things that's important with Rotary right now, I'm sure everybody here knows, the environment is a new avenue of service with Rotary, that you can actually put that towards your Rotary goals and you can actually still fulfill it. I remember when I first started, that was not the case. It was not an avenue of service, so that was kind of cool to see that during my tenure in the Nyack Rotary Club, from starting out as a member, into the board, into the president, that as I kept moving forward, trees kept becoming more of a focus at Rotary, which I thought was kind of interesting. It seemed like we were heading in the same direction, so to speak. And so, yeah, with the newest avenue of service being with Rotary, it's about an emphasis on the environment. Trees play an important part in our environment. Amy mentioned a little story about Arbor Day at the New Canaan Nature Center. And I find it very fulfilling to teach young people, even if they're 4 years old, about the importance of trees, how good they are, what they do for us. And it's always, during my tenure in the Nyack Rotary Club, it was always one of my passions to share my love of trees with the members in our club, with our community, being able to be out there and be visible. I did have a couple of photos of some cool things I've done in the past. One project I'm really proud of was a memorial planting project I did for the Rotary Day of Service, the first one last year, I believe it was. And what we did was we installed a little free library at a community center, and we planted a tree. And it was amazing to have this dedicated to a past Rotarian of our club. And that day they had a memorial service for her, and there was probably, I want to say, about 50 people that had arrived that were all touched by this woman in some way. And to see all of these people kind of like, it felt like, used to play the bands and stuff like that. It felt like I had a real audience of people. Instead of watching me play music, or watching me work with the environment, plant a tree, putting my hands in the ground, getting other people, let's grab a shovel, let's grab the tree, trying to get a little bit of excitement around it, things like that. And it was really a wonderful project that we used for our day of service. And it was just amazing to see that it actually meant something to people, and it wasn't just me on some rainy Saturday morning at 11 o'clock just planting a tree on the street, because that could have very well been what it looked like, and it would have looked more like this guy doing work rather than doing something to share with the community, doing something to make the world a better place. I have a little saying, I like to try and make the world a better place one tree at a time. That's one way I always try and look at the world. And I hope a prestigious organization with some of the best people here, sitting in such a beautiful part of the country, that we could all work together to share in making New Canaan a cleaner and greener place. Not that it's too far away from that, but there is a lot of urbanization, there is a lot of development. These things displace normal things in our environment. The way that deer are more into our landscapes now because there's less natural spaces, less shared community spaces. I mean, this is a wonderful place you have here in town here where everything is nice and green and you do have a focus on enjoying the environment, but I feel like there's other parts of town and other places nearby where it's not necessarily the same, and that's a place where I like to roll up my sleeves and try and get to work. So you may be asking yourself, who is this guy Jack Lambert? Who's Almstead? Almstead Tree and Shrub is celebrating our 60th year in changing the nature of tree care. So Almstead started in 1964 as a family business where Richie Almstead cut the top of his station wagon off to fill brush and logs in there when he was doing work over in New Rochelle down that way. And it's kind of blossomed into this like amazing organization of having 4 offices in New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, where I work now. and really doing wonderful things for people on their properties, from the tiny little postage stamp property to estate care to commercial property. It's really amazing that Almstead can pretty much handle just about anything that comes with taking care of our environment. Real reason that attracted me to come over here, actually. I really enjoyed their ethos on how they improve the environment, they work with their community. Those things are very important to me also. I've been an arborist the last 10 years, and so I really do enjoy caring for trees. I definitely wouldn't be doing this for that long if I didn't like working outside and working with trees and everything else. And I always look at what our trees are as our community's green assets. I think it's such an important thing to think of these as more investments and more pieces of us, in a sense, something that we've given back to the world. I really like to look at trees like that. The Arbor Day celebration in New Canaan Nature Center was an awesome example of that, I would say, of being able to take some special thing, which is not so much the apple tree itself, but instilling why the apple tree is important. Instilling why we're doing what we're doing. Even though they're 4-year-old kids, they all seem to really enjoy seeing what we were doing. They all answered my questions. What do trees need? Sun, water, air. It was really fun asking them all these kinds of questions and stuff like that. And so it's dedication to events like that, dedication to that kind of education and sharing of these things that I think are the important stuff that we do here at Almstead. And why are trees so special? Why should we care? Trees play a very integral role in our normal everyday life. It's kind of so much in our subconscious that you don't realize it. But it's really important in our community experience as well. Just some basic things about trees. Trees reduce heating and cooling costs by allowing for more shade in the summer and more sunlight in the winter. A single 8-inch diameter tree can provide enough oxygen for 4 people to breathe every day. Trees are proven to help instill calming feelings and even help patients heal faster when they have a better view of nature. A single tree can take up to 1,000 gallons of water a year. We've had a lot of storms lately. You're seeing a lot of water going around. Those trees are really taking it up right now. Trees also do a very important thing called carbon sequestration. What they do is trees take in carbon and provide oxygen. With so much excess carbon, we would have a lot of greenhouse gases, climate change, temperatures rising, things like that. So it's important to maintain canopy cover. New Canaan's canopy cover. These things are all important. So you got to think, just like Rotary, there's international, regional, local. I think the same thing when it comes to caring for trees and the environment and everything else. You can think a 30,000-foot view, a 15,000-foot view, and right here on the ground. Right here on the ground is like doing something like grabbing an apple tree and getting over to the nature center and putting that in the ground with the kids. Other fun projects I've done is installed trees with high school students, Rotaract students, things like that. I don't know if you guys have an Interact club that you work with here at the New Canaan Rotary. I did do a lot of work with our Interact students and trying to teach them about the environment and trees, getting them more involved in it. I did have a bunch of fun pictures of me with the young kids, the older kids, all that kind of stuff, but I had a couple technical difficulties with the with the projector there. But you get the idea. Trees also filter noise and dust. They provide wonderful visuals and even give privacy. Trees I do feel like are really worth investing time and energy in. I would hope that you would too, based on some of those things there, right? Trees definitely, when they're well maintained, provide the maximum amounts of those benefits. They also improve property values, reduce energy costs, and keep people and animals healthy and safe. It's no mystery that all the rapid urbanization and overdevelopment, the increased population growth is really stressing our natural environment. There's not a mystery about that. I think that's all something all of us see out there every day and accept. But there's something we can do about it. So what I think is important is replenishing green spaces, finding areas that need a bit of a rejuvenation in some sense or another, a community space, somewhere that maybe is less green than it should be, something that we might even be able to say, hey, we can bring all these folks into the community and we can do something special at the Laughlin Community Center and do something really nice here to maybe commemorate somebody who's important to the community and do other things like that and put something back out there. I think it's important to make this investment in our community because the future generations will always have the benefits of these trees. They'll be here for the next generation of people. Like that's, again, that thinking of with the young children was, I hope one day some kid 18 years from now comes back to that place, thought about when they were 4 years old, 14 years ago, pick an apple off the tree, remember for a second, have that aha moment, like, wow, that was actually pretty cool. You know, I remember this, I did that, I helped this, this tree's still here. I've gone on and done all this other stuff in my life, but this tree is still here in the same spot, doing the same thing, growing apples, right? And then being able to take that, have that aha moment and think, you know what? There's a bunch of 4-year-old kids right now who should come here and pick a tree off, pick an apple off the tree. Put another tree in over here. We're missing a tree in the orchard, something like that, you know, just trying to find that way of making it important. I used to like, when I was just starting out with Rotary, one of my really fun things that I used to do was go to the, we had a place called the NIAC Center, and they had a wonderful after school program for all the kids. So I would come to the school after 4 o'clock on a Friday, come down and say, let's all go down to Memorial Park. We go down to Memorial Park and I show them the mulberry tree. Love the mulberry tree. Thought it was so big mulberry tree. What I didn't realize was that all the kids really noticed the fruit that was on the ground and around the tree. Then I never had to say, don't eat that plant as many times as I did when I took the kids to Memorial Park. The same thing with the crab apple. Looking at all the little crab apples, pulling them off. It's not a cherry. But yeah, I had to tell the kids, don't eat that! I had to say that quite a bit on that trip, but it was fun just to kind of be able to see this interest that, you know, like they're trying to figure out that like this thing really is doing something. This guy really is trying to, you know, teach us something. That's what I thought in my head. So yeah, Rotary International has been addressing this kind of stuff with the environment, with this new avenue of service, with putting a more emphasis on doing green projects and things like that. And I think that this is the opportunity for New Canaan to say, take all of us together and maybe we work as like the New Canaan Canopy Coalition to help increase green space, to help preserve green space, to make sure that we don't lose the character of the village. One of the places I worked a lot extensively before was the village of Upper Nyack, New York. It's another green space that just really covets that wonderful wooded characteristic of mature trees and beautiful, like older kind of like heritage that you feel when you go down and see some of these properties. There's a lot of estates here in New Canaan. There's a lot of these homes that have been on these properties that have been around for hundreds of years. There's got to be trees that George Washington sat under around here somewhere, just based on what I've seen in this town. And so yeah, the community can definitely benefit from people like us taking a more sincere interest in those kinds of things and in bringing awareness to it and making it a real thing that people actually see. There's a lot of new natural phenomena that's happening right now that we're not used to. Climate change, I mean, this 3 weeks of 100-degree weather this year, that didn't seem like it's normal. Maybe in Texas, not in Connecticut. There's new pests here. I'm sure a lot of you folks have been seeing the spotted lanternfly. That's big, purplish polka dot bug that's sucking on all kinds of trees and making a big mess out there. Another threatening insect. Beech leaf disease. I don't know if anybody has big beeches on their properties, things like that. I'm seeing a lot of our beeches starting to cry. Seeing a lot of them starting to go.
Is there a cure for that? Do you have a spray or something?
It's still in development to really be something that produces tangible results. So right now we're still kind of shooting around in the dark a little bit. About 10 years ago was the emerald ash borer that had come in. That was a big problem around here. I don't know if a lot of you folks with the ash trees. A lot of those are all pretty much gone now. And that was a wonderful tree. It's a firewood tree, you know. And I feel like in my lifetime I will see that tree go extinct, and that's really sad because that is I don't know if anybody hears the firewood. If anybody hears a real firewood lover, there's a firewood poem. I won't read you the poem, but I will say the nuts and bolts of it is ash is the best firewood that you can get. And it's sad to see something so special like that, that's a real harvestable timber, not to mention what they used to make all the baseball bats for the MLB out of. Yeah, baseball bats are all made out of ash trees. And this is something that's happening right before us that's disappearing. So things like that, I feel like, create this need to want to plant trees, to want to protect trees, to want to build awareness for the community so that people take notice to these things and maybe actually care about it and do something about it. It feels like Mother Nature is crying out, and it feels like we need to do something about it. Well, I like to think of trying to be like a superhero. You know? This is what we do. We save trees. We save them. And so what can we do to be so super here at Rotary? We can plant trees. We can care for trees. And I'm not saying you need to be an arborist to care for a tree. There's normal things like putting a couple of stakes to hold one straight, making sure one has extra water in the heat, mulch, a little extra mulch, prune a broken branch, pull a couple of weeds. I mean, these are all big impact, low effort types of actions that people can do every day out there that can help trees. So, I like to think of it as that it's these little stitches in time that help create a bigger investment for all of the folks that are around these trees, around these places, the people that are sharing in this, and it can go a really long way. Enjoying the shade, the fruit, and the feeling of making the world a better place. That's what I think of when I do a little something with a tree. Just that I can really try and make it so that, like I said, it can make the world a better place one tree at a time. During my time on the board as president of my club, I love sharing my passion for trees by incorporating trees into service projects. And some of the real fun things that we've done are like these things with planting the trees with the students, planting the trees in community spaces. I've also done a lot of like tree stewardship classes and things like that, trying to get normal folks in who want to just learn what it takes to do a little something extra. How do you prune a branch the right way? How do you spot a problem? How do you know that the tree's got too much water, too little water? Things like that. Again, it doesn't you don't have to be an arborist to do little things to care for plants. I try to put an emphasis on bringing the village, the Rotary, the trees into something together that it actually was something that it takes a village to do these things, right? But we would come up with a project and we'd plant trees along the street. And we'd say, okay, we need a couple of guys. We got one guy with a backhoe. Great, we got one guy with a backhoe. We got a bunch of Rotarians who got their sleeves rolled up, they got their gloves, they got their shovels. We got one of the people from the village, an administrator, to help us do some of the planning and coordinating of all this stuff. And inviting members of the community. I had the mayor of the town give a proclamation saying how wonderful it was to have Arbor Day in the village, and said that this day is Arbor Day in the village, and other fun things like that brought the Rotary Club together. I mean, all these Rotarians putting their shovels on the ground, right afterwards. It was just like, there's a lot of excitement around that kind of stuff. And it is really cool to see Rotary teams working with arborists and other volunteers and landscapers and the village, some of the government folks, so to speak, and then inviting out mayors and politicians and those kind of folks to see all of this stuff happening in their own little spaces that they're responsible for and that we're responsible for. So what are some things that we can do to make New Canaan a greener place? Would love to do planting projects. Would love to do some tree stewardship types of things and try and show some folks a couple of things like workshops, things like that. I'd love to come up with some kind of community type of event that we could all share together in, similar to like what we did with Arbor Day at the New Canaan Nature Center. It would be nice to kind of take that to a bigger scale and bring it to the village itself and kind of get more involved with the town and do something a little bit more creative and come up with a spot that could actually use this sort of effort, and that we kind of all plan towards making that event something special where we've got the town's blessing, we've got trees, we've got all the operational stuff, we've got folks that can work, we've got all the things that we need to do this. And I'll tell you, I had a really big sense of pride every time I did one of those things, that it wasn't just me out there with a shovel, that it was enough that I got so many other people to say, let's do that Saturday morning at 11 o'clock. Let's go over there with a shovel and spend a couple, an hour, 2 hours, and dig a hole, put the tree in, learn a little something, and then go on and have lunch and have the rest of your day. But it was really cool to see that and be able to do that. I really loved engaging with the community, and it always felt really prideful to share that love and passion I have for trees and see other people, taking that same kind of feeling and some ownership of it, some pride in it. It's really, really a cool thing. But the thing is that I've never seen this stuff happen overnight. Trees don't turn into these massive, mature heritage trees overnight. These kinds of projects take time, planning, coordinations, money, all these other kinds of things, but it's nothing that Rotarians can't do. It's definitely one of those things that it takes some time and dedication, but the right plants in the right places with the right planning can be a really special thing. So what do we share in common? The innate desire to make the world a better place. I'd like to partner with the New Canaan Rotary in making the world a better place, one tree at a time. Does anybody have any questions? Yes?
How do we bring this message to the local government? I think, with the frequency of severe storms we're going to be experiencing going forward, there's no stopping it anytime in the foreseeable future. How to preserve the existing trees, because like you said, it takes decades for it to be a large creating the canopy to really protect our fragile ecosystem. How hard is it for towns to be able to make those initiatives to protect these trees?
So right now there's a lot of grants that are available in different avenues of government in Connecticut in general. There's reforestation grants, there's other kinds of things like that. One of the things that I did was actually just go over to town hall, look for somebody who was in the planning and zoning, one of the towns I worked in, they had like a greens committee person type of, almost like a green planner kind of person in the village, something like that. And so it was like important just getting that person's ear. They would almost kind of come up with a list of saying like, hey, we've got this street that we need to plant trees on, we need volunteers, and that's kind of like where we all put our hands up and sort of jumped in on that. So I was a little bit more intimate with the local government, so to speak, on like kind of where to go, who to ask things to, and stuff like that. I would say a trip to town hall would be a good start, and I'd be more than happy to, one of the things I wanted to do today was to see if I could get folks that would want to sign up or be interested in working with me as the New Canaan Canopy Coalition, so that we can kind of take some bit of a Rotary flair to this, bring it with somebody who's an expert, go to some place like the town and say, hey, we've got all this cool stuff that we really would like to do, and we just need a little bit of direction and a blessing. And usually these places are interested and wanting to come up with a way to work that angle, work that project, make it something that's special. We can also host workshops. It's another thing that doesn't really take a whole lot. Can talk to the town, see if there's a place that we could host a workshop about some basic things of tree stewardship, tree planting, things like that. How best to care for trees in a basic way. We could adopt a park, adopt a spot, one of those types of things. There's always usually a once a year thing where a lot of Rotaries will pick, it used to be on the Palisades Parkway where I lived, I guess here it would be the Merritt Parkway. And basically, we would just pick all these different exits, and each Rotary would clean up one of the exits. And that was a really nice project that we used to do. But all these things, I would say Almstead has all the expertise, the tools, the necessary labor, everything that we would need to make one of these things successful. Like, we would definitely be a good partner for these kinds of things. Yes?
2 questions. The workshops, would they cover things like, in my backyard, I got 2 acres of trees. There's not one that's 20 feet or smaller, because the deer ate them all.
Yep.
Address that question. And number 2 question is, I looked at solar for our house, which is one side of the whole eco thing. And the guy comes in and says, well, you gotta cut all those trees down, put solar in, because it's shading your house. How do you cover that in the workshops and balance?
So there is a balance. The solar thing is kind of tough because solar and trees don't get along. Shade and sun power, they're not adding up very well. The thing that I would say when it comes to stuff like the solar is that it's more of a difficult thing, because sometimes you can do some pruning and it might help, but a lot of times the tree is in such a location that you're not really
like
going to
tulip tree.
That's a tough tree to have solar under. Things like the first thing about deer, stuff like that. There's a lot of like kind of home remedy stuff you can do to protect your plants with deer. The thing is that you're always on guard with that. You've always got to kind of there's a bit of a challenge.
You can't look the other way or they'll eat all your hostas.
Well, one of the photos I had on here was a planting project I did with the village of Upper Nyack on one of their home farmstead houses, like a historic house that they cared for, and we installed a bunch of small bottle brush buckeye plants in there, these very cool little hickory trees, but we had to protect it from the deer. So what did we do? We put little cages around each one of the trees. So it was just an extra step in the process where it was like, okay, well, we planted all of our trees, now we've got to grab these little cages and we're going to set up the cages to put around the trees and everything else. So that's something that can be done. Same as like some netting or other things like that to protect the plants from deer.
A lot of that, I put evergreens in the woods, and then as they grew, they ate up
to as much as they can reach.
As high as they can reach.
As high as they can reach, yeah. And that's when you got to put something underneath it that they don't eat.
It's a battle.
It is. And yeah, that's all stuff that I'd like to cover in those types of things. Yes, sir.
So, one thing that really saddens me in New Canaan is these, it happens all the time, developers come in, there's one just quarter of a mile from my house, where there was maybe 3-4 acres and a little house in the forest, you could barely see the house, old house. So a developer buys it, gets a permit, demolishes the house, and now there's a house that the old one could fit in 3 times going up there. Roof's gone on, but the forest is gone. There is not a tree left, and it happens all over. And you can just do this. I was talking about this to somebody I think who lived in Bedford, some town in Westchester. You can't do that. I mean, just like you can't demolish a house without a permit.
Right.
Apparently, some towns in Westchester, you can't take that tree down without a permit.
Yes.
At least a live tree, or I don't know the regulate. But we have no. I don't know if it's common, but I mean, it just. And then they put wall down. And of course, chemicals on the lawn, herbicides, and we drink that stuff because we're all on groundwater.
Yes.
So the quality of water goes down. I mean, and it's hard to get through to anyone in our town government that we should try and regulate this kind of thing.
Yes.
Because I mean, the point you make about carbon sequestration, I mean, it's so powerful. We got a message on Sunday, didn't we, about?
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm from New York, and a lot of the times you did need to get permits to do things like that. From what I understand, in New Canaan, you are supposed to get permits to clear cut lots, as they call it, with clear cutting. It's one thing to take down a couple of trees.
10,000 square feet or more, you have to get a permit for, but nobody does it.
Nobody does. And that's one of the challenges, is that there's little enforcement.
10,000 square feet is a lot.
That's a pretty big area.
It's a big area. So if it's 9,000, you just do it, right?
Yeah, but they do it anyway.
They do it
And then you can go and basically.
So you're gonna pay $50 fine to get.
Yeah, you can go find, you can stop the project.
If you get there in time.
Didn't we pass a tree ordinance maybe 10, 15 years ago that you couldn't cut down trees without a permit over a foot in diameter? And I think it was challenged in the courts and struck down.
Yeah.
And that's why we don't have that ordinance.
You have this rule though, this 10,000 square foot rule.
But we
that, like,
tried
6.4.
passing at a town level,
Clear cutting, yeah.
and it was taken away from us in the courts.
All right, so we need the Supreme Court.
Yeah, that's a more difficult challenge there in terms of the bureaucracies and how things work. Yes, sir.
It's a state issue.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, I'm around tree guys doing tree work all the time. I got a tremendous respect for the people who are up in the trees, climbing. When they take down a big tree, they're often cutting off a limb which weighs several tons and are lowering it to the ground by ropes which you hope are strong enough for the job. I really am in awe of the skill and the diligence of these people, but also the tree business is one of the highest workman's compensation rate people in the business. Stevedores, I think, are top of the list, but the guys who are doing the tree work, there's trees fall onto live power lines.
Oh, yes.
And they get called in the middle of the night, in the middle of the storm, and they go out. So I just want you to know that there's some of us who really see these guys close up, you got a lot of respect for your.
Who's our current tree warden, Keith?
Appreciate that.
Who's our current tree warden?
Well,
Town of
His
Canyon?
name's Bob. I forget Bob's last
He's a
name.
tree, one, he's a tree.
Okay.
Yeah, he was with Bruce Porter for many years.
Yeah.
But it can be very, very dangerous work at times, and believe me, I take my hat off to you
I
guys.
appreciate that, thank you. I always joke around that this is the most dangerous job on land. The only job that is more dangerous you could possibly pick is to be one of those Alaskan fishermen, one of those kinds of ice road trucker guys. There's only so many professions that really like top being able to get crushed by a 20-ton tree with a chainsaw in your hands. I used a really funny video one time from the movie Poltergeist when I did one of these presentations where the tree busts in and grabs the little kid out. I said, this actually really happens. Not quite that exact way, but trees come into people's houses and take things away. It's real, it does happen. And so the thing that's important is like, understanding that there's sort of a balance between what this gentleman had said over there around clear cutting and losing trees. There's a balance of dangerous trees. There's a balance of the people that are doing the work. I mean, all of these things kind of are in this delicate sort of like ecosystem of their own way, so to speak. And so like everything's sort of dependent on each other. I used to always enjoy when I would do these kinds of projects and I have to cut a tree down, I always replace the tree. I just try and turn it into a special thing where it's like, yeah, I know we're gonna lose this tree. And unfortunately, there's like no other way around this tree because it's dangerous or whatever else. It has to go. But we could put in a nice tree, the right kind of tree in the right kind of place on somebody's property. Those things can definitely help a lot. And I think all of those things are worth a little bit of conversation around. So if you folks are more in tune with the local government, these kinds of things, stuff like that. Again, this New Canaan Canopy Coalition, we can sort of like come together and do a few of these things together, that we can get some answers to questions, we can sort of work together, we can bring more awareness around this stuff. As I would call it, bring the Almstead Arbor Care flair to any of these kinds of things. The stuff that I would be more than happy to participate in. We do have fall right around the corner, so there's a really good opportunity to do some kind of fall tree planting event together with the club.
Do you currently do work for the town?
Oh, we actually do work for the town, yes. New Canaan has this very interesting program where they rotate between contractors. Yeah, they rotate, so every other week is somebody else's turn. This week it's our turn. We happen to have a good week. Trees fell over. But we're making tons of money out there, all that kind of stuff.
Unless there's a storm.
Unless there's a storm, they typically don't, they typically don't bother, but if they do have things to do, and one of the other things I would say is like a town like Norwalk is a really good one that we can look at with stuff like this. They put all these grants together. Their city arborist is putting together $30,000 to $50,000 worth of investment on all street trees, all new stuff, things like that. And that's kind of what inspired me, that maybe New Canaan could kind of follow suit with some of the stuff that Norwalk's doing, and we could sort of use that as a bit of an example.
I guess we're out of time.
Wonderful.
Hang around if anybody.
Yes,
has
please.
anything.
Thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody.